Most women, upon discovering the man they promised to marry already had a wife stashed away in some perfect suburban life, would probably start throwing plates, or maybe his expensive Italian suits out the window. When I found the proof, the damning Facebook photo, the hidden credit card bills addressed to Mrs. Isabella Thorne, my first instinct was pure, white-hot rage. But then, looking at the elaborate wedding binder I'd already filled, the contracts half signed, a different, darker thought pushed through the tears. Why should I be the only one cleaning up his mess? Why cancel the party when I could just change the guest list? Or better yet, collaborate with the unknowing guest of honor. My fiancé was about to learn that hell hath no fury like two women scorned. The scent of expensive paper stock and artisanal coffee hung in the air, a stark contrast to the bitter taste forming in the back of my throat. Across the small marble table at this discreet midtown Manhattan cafe sat Isabella Thorne, elegantly turning over swatches of ivory cardstock, her brow furrowed in concentration as she considered font pairings for wedding invitations. My wedding invitations. She had impeccable taste, I had to give her that. The cruel, almost laughably absurd irony? Isabella was, unknowingly at this exact moment, meticulously helping me plan my dream wedding to her own husband, Marcus Thorne. She had no idea who I really was, beyond the persona I'd carefully constructed, a soon-to-be bride needing expert guidance. Me? My name is Amelia Reyes. I'm 36 years old, a moderately successful architect, and precisely 48 hours ago, my meticulously designed world had imploded. That's when I stumbled upon irrefutable proof of Isabella's existence, and consequently, the elaborate, devastating, double life led by the man I loved, the man I was preparing to marry. Most women faced with such a shattering betrayal would have unleashed hellfire, canceled everything, perhaps keyed his expensive car. But as the initial shockwave receded, leaving behind a chilling calm, a different, far more intricate idea began to take shape. Why let him off easy? Why let him control the narrative of the breakup? No, I decided. The wedding planning would continue. Only now, it would have a new, uninvited collaborator. My life up until 72 hours ago felt like a blueprint finally coming to perfect fruition. At 36, I'd established myself in the competitive world of New York architecture. My boutique firm, Reyes Design Studio, was gaining recognition for innovative, sustainable residential projects. I had a beautiful apartment overlooking the Hudson, a close circle of supportive friends, a career I was passionate about. The only missing piece, the one I'd yearned for with a quiet intensity amidst the demanding hours and solitary drafting sessions, was a true partner, someone to share the quiet moments and the hard-won triumphs with. Then, 18 months ago, Marcus Thorne walked into my life at an industry gala. He was everything I thought I was looking for, handsome in that effortlessly polished Wall Street way, intelligent, charming, witty, successful, a financial consultant with his own firm, he'd said, and seemingly utterly captivated by me. He listened intently when I talked about building designs, admired my ambition, made me laugh, and crucially, made me feel seen, cherished, adored. Our courtship felt like a whirlwind romance ripped from a glossy magazine. Candlelit dinners at impossible-to-get-into restaurants, spontaneous weekend trips to Vermont or the Hamptons, thoughtful little gifts, deep conversations that stretched late into the night. He spoke convincingly of wanting a future, a family, a life built together. 6 months ago, on a breathtakingly clear night overlooking the city skyline from a private rooftop terrace he'd somehow secured, Marcus got down on one knee. The ring, a stunning cushion-cut diamond I'd idly pointed out in a magazine weeks earlier, sparkled under the city lights. I'd wept tears of pure, unadulterated joy and said yes, without a moment's hesitation. He was, I believed, with every fiber of my being, my soulmate, the missing keystone in the arch of my life. Almost immediately, we dove into wedding planning, or rather, I dove in, with Marcus playing the role of the supportive but incredibly busy fiancé. His job, he explained, involved frequent, often last-minute travel, meetings with international clients, urgent consultations in other cities, sometimes requiring overnight stays or long weekends away. Cities like Boston, Philadelphia, sometimes even needing to pop over to Connecticut for a crucial client meeting near Greenwich. I, consumed by my own demanding career and blinded by love and trust, never questioned it. I missed him when he was gone, naturally, but I also admired his dedication, his drive. It seemed part and parcel of his success. When he was in town, he was attentive, enthusiastic. The first tiny, almost invisible crack in the perfect facade appeared about 3 weeks ago. Marcus had just returned from a supposed 2-day conference in Boston. While unpacking his overnight bag in my apartment, he kept a few things there, though maintained his own place downtown. Easier for client meetings, he'd reasoned. A small, unfamiliar object fell out from the pocket of the blazer he'd tossed onto my bed. A single, rather elegant silver earring, definitely not mine. It was a delicate drop design, something classic, understated. When I picked it up, questioning, he'd laughed it off easily. Oh, that. Must have gotten mixed up at the hotel gym or something. Crazy. He'd tossed it dismissively onto my dresser and changed the subject, admiring a new architectural model I was working on. It felt slightly off, but his explanation was plausible enough, and I was distracted by a looming project deadline. I tucked the earring away in my jewelry box, intending to ask him about it again later, and promptly forgot. The second crack, the one that started the real tremor of doubt, came a week later. We were having a rare, quiet night in at my place, scrolling through potential honeymoon destinations online. Marcus got a call, glanced at the caller ID, and his expression subtly shifted. He muted the phone quickly, saying, "Ugh, just work, ignore it." But I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen before it vanished. Isabella. An unusual name, not one I recognized from his vague descriptions of colleagues or clients. When I casually asked later who Isabella was, he seemed momentarily flustered, then recovered smoothly. "Oh, Isabella, she's an old family friend's daughter, lives up in Connecticut, calls occasionally to ask for financial advice, poor thing, bit lost." Again, plausible. Again, something felt not quite right. A tiny seed of unease was planted. The final catastrophic implosion occurred just 2 days before my fateful coffee meeting with the unwitting Isabella. It was late on a Thursday night. Marcus was supposedly away on another urgent client trip, this time to Philadelphia until Saturday. I was working late at my studio, finalizing blueprints. My phone buzzed with a notification, not a call or text, but a Facebook memory alert. A photo from 7 years ago posted by a mutual acquaintance from an old college alumni event Marcus and I had both peripherally attended years before we officially met. The photo showed a group of people, including a younger-looking Marcus, arm casually draped around a smiling, attractive woman with dark, wavy hair. The caption read, "Great catching up with Marcus Thorne and his lovely wife Isabella at the reunion. Wife. Isabella." The words leaped off the screen, searing themselves into my brain. My breath hitched, my vision blurred. I clicked frantically on Isabella Thorne's tagged profile. It was private mostly, but the profile picture was recent, unmistakably the same woman from the 7-year-old photo, maybe a little older but still vibrant, smiling warmly. Her listed location? Greenwich, Connecticut. Her relationship status? Married to Marcus Thorne. There were older, public photos visible too. Vacation snaps tagged with Marcus in Italy 5 years ago. A picture of them smiling, holding keys in front of a beautiful suburban house 3 years ago. Photos clearly indicating a long-term, established life together. A life he was apparently living concurrently with his passionate, committed relationship with me. The world tilted on its axis. The floor seemed to drop out from beneath me. I felt a wave of nausea so intense I had to grip the edge of my desk. Every business trip, every late-night client meeting, every vague explanation, every canceled plan, every unanswered call. It all slammed into focus with horrifying clarity. The silver earring, the Isabella phone call, the separate apartment, the reluctance to fully merge finances yet. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was cold, hard, digital proof of an elaborate, long-running deception. He wasn't just cheating. He was living a complete double life. And I, Amelia Reyes, successful architect, supposedly intelligent woman, was the unwitting other woman, the fiancée in a sham engagement. The hours that followed were a blur of shock, disbelief, and a pain so profound it felt physical. Tears streamed down my face, hot and angry. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to call Marcus immediately and unleash every ounce of my fury and hurt. I drafted furious texts, then deleted them. I paced my studio like a caged animal. How could he? How could I have been so blind? The humiliation was almost as bad as the heartbreak. But then, sometime in the desolate hours before dawn, fueled by caffeine and a desperate need to reclaim some semblance of control, a different kind of thought began to emerge from the wreckage. Calling him now, confronting him in a tearful rage, would give him the power. He'd likely lie more, gaslight me, maybe even try to play the victim himself. Canceling the wedding vendors one by one, explaining the humiliating situation, that felt like admitting defeat, letting him simply walk away from the chaos he'd created, perhaps back to his comfortable life with Isabella, leaving me to pick up the pieces alone. Number. That wasn't justice. That wasn't satisfying. What if? What if I didn't cancel anything just yet? What if I played his game but changed the rules? He wanted a perfect wedding facade? Fine. But what if the planning involved his wife? The idea was audacious, bordering on insane, but it sparked something within me. A flicker of dark, strategic fire replacing the consuming flames of raw grief. He had treated both Isabella and me like pawns in his selfish game. What if the pawns decided to cooperate? My architect's brain, trained to see patterns and devise intricate plans, kicked into high gear. I needed a plausible reason to connect with Isabella Thorne without revealing my identity or connection to Marcus. A quick, targeted online search, cross-referencing her name with Greenwich social circles and local businesses, yielded a potential opening. Isabella, it turned out, had a background in art history and occasionally did freelance event styling and consulting for high-end charity galas and private parties in her affluent community. Her aesthetic, judging by the few public photos of events she'd styled, was sophisticated, elegant, exactly the vibe I'd, ironically, envisioned for my wedding. The plan formed quickly. I would reach out to Isabella professionally under my own name, but presenting myself simply as a New York architect planning her wedding, seeking expert styling consultation. I would emphasize needing someone with exquisite taste, discretion, and experience with upscale events. I wouldn't mention my fiancé's name initially, keeping him vaguely defined as a busy executive who trusted my judgment. It was a long shot. She might be too busy, might not take on wedding clients, might find the approach strange, but it was worth trying. To my surprise, after I sent a carefully crafted introductory email praising her previous work, citing a specific charity gala I found online, and outlining my need for high-level aesthetic guidance for a sophisticated NYC wedding, Isabella responded positively, albeit professionally. She remembered the gala, seemed flattered by the praise, and agreed to an initial consultation meeting in the city the following week to discuss my vision. She had no reason to suspect anything amiss. For her, I was just another potential affluent client. And so, 48 hours after discovering my life was a lie, I found myself sitting across from Isabella Thorne, the unknowingly wronged wife, discussing the merits of calligraphy versus engraving for my wedding invitations to her husband. The absurdity was dizzying. My hands trembled slightly as I pushed a portfolio of venue photos and fabric swatches across the table. Our initial meetings over the next few weeks were a masterclass in compartmentalization for me. I played the role of the enthusiastic, slightly overwhelmed, detail-oriented bride-to-be. Isabella, in turn, was the consummate professional, knowledgeable, insightful, with an unerring eye for quality and style. We discussed floral arrangements. I leaned towards peonies, her favorite according to a stray comment Marcus once made, lighting design, linen choices, even the subtle nuances of bridesmaids' dress colors. It was surreal, discussing these intimate details of my supposed wedding with the woman whose marriage Marcus was actively betraying with me. Throughout these sessions, I began the delicate, dangerous process of planting seeds, dropping carefully curated, seemingly innocuous details about my fiancé. Never his name, always just he or my fiancé. He travels so much for work, I'd sigh casually, mirroring Marcus's own excuses. Just got back from Boston, heading to Philly next week, always seems to have last-minute client emergencies pop up, especially needing to go up to Connecticut, near Greenwich apparently. I watched Isabella's polite smile tighten, just fractionally at the mention of Greenwich. While discussing catering, I mentioned his supposed favorite dish, a specific osso buco from a particular restaurant in Little Italy, a place Marcus had taken me but had perhaps also taken Isabella years ago. I saw a flicker of something, recognition, confusion, in her eyes before she smoothed it over. I showed her fabric swatches for potential table runners, including a distinctive brocade pattern I'd glimpsed in the background of one of her public family photos. My fiancé has surprisingly strong opinions about textures, I'd remarked lightly. When discussing the guest list logistics, I vaguely mentioned his side included several partners from a specific investment firm, where I knew Marcus actually worked, hoping a name might ring a bell for her, and some old family friends based up in Connecticut. Each breadcrumb was dropped carefully, designed not to immediately expose the whole truth, but to accumulate, to create a pattern of unsettling coincidences in Isabella's sharp mind. I saw the subtle shifts in her demeanor over our subsequent meetings. The initial professional warmth became tinged with a certain watchfulness. She started asking slightly more probing, though still professionally phrased, questions about my fiancé, his background, how we met. Her gaze would sometimes linger on me thoughtfully when she thought I wasn't looking. I knew the seeds of doubt were taking root. She was intelligent. She wouldn't ignore these inconsistencies forever. Inside, I was a wreck, oscillating between guilt over deceiving this seemingly lovely woman and a cold fury at Marcus that fueled my bizarre plan. Every meeting felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm. What would happen when she finally put the pieces together? Would she explode? Would she accuse me of being complicit? Or would she perhaps see the real enemy was the man who had manipulated us both? The moment of truth arrived sooner than I expected, and not entirely as I'd planned. Isabella canceled our scheduled meeting one Tuesday morning via a curt professional email citing a personal matter. A week of silence followed. Then she requested another meeting, same cafe, but her tone in the email was different, clipped, formal, devoid of the previous collaborative warmth. My stomach plummeted. She knew. I walked into the cafe that afternoon, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Isabella was already seated, nursing a cup of tea, her expression unreadable but radiating a coiled tension. She didn't offer pleasantries. As soon as I sat down, she looked me directly in the eye, her voice low and steady but trembling slightly with suppressed emotion. "Amelia," she began, her gaze unwavering, "we need to stop pretending. I know who your fiancé is. I know because he's my husband, Marcus Thorne." The air crackled between us. There was no point denying it. I met her gaze, feeling a strange mix of dread and relief. "Yes, Isabella," I admitted quietly. "I know. I found out just before I first contacted you." Her eyes flashed with pain, then anger. "You knew? You knew he was married, and you still went along with this charade? Planning a wedding with his wife?" "No," I interrupted quickly, leaning forward, needing her to understand this crucial part. "No, I swear I had no idea until just before I emailed you. I was completely blindsided, devastated. My initial plan, this whole consultation, it wasn't to hurt you. It was because I didn't know what else to do. I was angry, hurt, and I thought maybe this was a way to expose him without letting him just walk away clean." I explained how I'd discovered the truth, the shock, the pain, the feeling of being utterly foolish. I didn't excuse my deception towards her, but I laid bare Marcus's far greater betrayal of us both. Isabella listened intently, her expression shifting from fury to a dawning, shared understanding. The anger didn't vanish, but its target seemed to subtly shift. She saw the genuine pain in my eyes, mirrored, perhaps, in her own reflection. She'd likely just had her own brutal confrontation with Marcus, heard his lies, his justifications. After a long, tense silence, she spoke again, her voice still low but now laced with a cold, hard edge I hadn't heard before. He told me you were just a brief fling, someone obsessed with him, that the engagement was a misunderstanding you blew out of proportion." She gave a short, bitter laugh. "Clearly, he lies as easily as he breathes, to both of us." And then she did something completely unexpected. Instead of unleashing the fury I deserved for my part in the deception, however unintentional its initial target, she leaned forward slightly, a new, dangerous glint in her eyes. "All right, Amelia Reyes," she said, the formality dropping. "So my husband, our Marcus, thinks he can play us both for fools, does he? Thinks he can just juggle lives, discard women when they become inconvenient? Maybe. Maybe we shouldn't let him get away with it quite so easily." My breath caught. Was she suggesting, "You wanted to expose him using the wedding plans?" Isabella continued, a calculating look replacing the pain. "That's creative. Messy, but creative. But maybe we can refine that idea. Maybe, instead of just exposing him, we make sure he pays for this, in every sense of the word." And just like that, an unspoken, unholy alliance was forged across that small cafe table, fueled by shared betrayal and a mutual desire for potent justice. The unsuspecting wedding planner had just become my co-conspirator. Our subsequent planning sessions took on a whole new energy. The focus shifted dramatically. Instead of debating cake flavors, we were strategizing. Phase 1. Information gathering. Isabella, with her access to their shared life and finances, became the inside source. She discreetly gathered evidence, copies of joint account statements showing Marcus's unexplained withdrawals, likely funding his life with me, credit card bills detailing lavish spending on gifts and trips for me, potentially even recordings of his increasingly desperate lies as he tried to maintain the facade with her, while likely sensing something was amiss. I provided my own records, receipts for wedding deposits Marcus had supposedly paid but likely used joint funds for, emails where he promised financial contributions he hadn't made. Phase 2. Financial strangulation. We discovered Marcus had been using a joint line of credit, primarily secured by the equity in their Greenwich house, to fund significant portions of his double life and the upcoming wedding. With Isabella's cooperation as co-signer, we contacted the bank. We presented evidence of Marcus's duplicitous spending and potential fraud, using marital assets for an affair and a fake wedding. The bank, alarmed, agreed to freeze the line of credit immediately, pending further investigation. This cut off a major source of Marcus's disposable cash flow, just as major wedding vendor payments were coming due. Phase 3. Strategic cancellation and asset recovery. Armed with contracts and deposit receipts, we contacted key wedding vendors. the exclusive venue, the high-end caterer, the sought-after photographer, posing initially as just me, the bride, then sometimes with Isabella subtly intervening as a concerned family friend with financial oversight. We began strategically canceling services. Where possible, we aimed to recoup deposits I had paid directly. For contracts Marcus had signed or paid deposits on, likely with joint funds, the goal was maximum disruption and financial penalty for him. We timed the cancellations carefully, often just outside the window for partial refunds, maximizing his losses. Isabella also consulted her divorce attorney immediately, initiating proceedings to freeze all joint marital assets, effectively cutting Marcus off completely. Phase 4. The gift of information. We decided against a messy public confrontation at a non-existent wedding. Instead, we opted for targeted strikes. Isabella, through her attorney, ensured evidence of Marcus's infidelity and financial deception, including his engagement to me and the planned sham wedding, was formally documented in the divorce filings, making it part of the public record should anyone look. Simultaneously, I anonymously forwarded carefully selected evidence, perhaps proof of the frozen line of credit, hints of the dual life, to a senior partner at Marcus's consulting firm, framed as a concerned third party, worried about potential reputational risk or financial impropriety associated with one of their consultants. We didn't need to destroy his career outright. Just planting serious doubts about his judgment and trustworthiness would likely have significant professional repercussions in his field. Marcus, caught completely off guard, began to unravel. His calls became frantic, first to me, then presumably to Isabella. He likely found his credit lines frozen, vendors demanding payments he couldn't make, and possibly faced uncomfortable questions at work. He swung between blustering threats, pathetic pleading, and attempts to pit us against each other. Isabella is poisoning you against me. Component placement. Amelia is a gold digger, trying to ruin us. We presented a united front of stony silence, blocking his calls, referring all communication to our respective attorneys. He was utterly isolated, trapped in the wreckage of the double life he had so arrogantly constructed. The implosion was swift and comprehensive. Marcus Thorne, the master manipulator, found himself outplayed, outmaneuvered, and utterly exposed. The divorce proceedings initiated by Isabella were brutal, armed as she was with irrefutable evidence of his infidelity, financial deception, and the sheer audacity of the planned sham wedding. Given the circumstances and the frozen assets, the settlement heavily favored her, leaving Marcus financially crippled. Professionally, the anonymous tip seemed to have the desired effect. While I never learned the exact details, Marcus quietly parted ways with his prestigious consulting firm a few months later, likely under a cloud of suspicion. Rebuilding his reputation in the tight-knit financial world, especially after such a flagrant breach of trust, would be an uphill battle, if not impossible. Amelia Reyes, the other woman? I walked away from the wreckage, not unscathed, but whole. The engagement ring was returned via courier, without comment. The wedding deposits I could recover, I did. The rest I wrote off as an expensive, painful lesson learned. I poured my energy back into my architectural work, designing structures built on solid foundations, unlike the relationship I'd almost committed to. The experience left me warier, perhaps less naively romantic, but also stronger, more discerning, and with a newfound appreciation for my own resilience. Isabella Thorne. She finalized her divorce with quiet dignity. She sold the large Greenwich house, downsizing to a chic apartment in the city, closer to her burgeoning art world connections. She channeled her energy and impeccable taste into launching the small art gallery she'd always dreamed of, the one Marcus had likely subtly discouraged for years. She emerged not as a victim, but as a survivor, reclaiming her independence and pursuing her own passions. We didn't become best friends, Isabella and I. The circumstances of our meeting were too fraught, the shared betrayal too raw for easy camaraderie, but a unique bond, forged in the crucible of Marcus's deceit, remained. We developed a quiet respect for each other, an understanding that transcended the awkwardness of our initial connection. We'd both been played, but neither of us had allowed ourselves to remain a pawn. We had, in our own ways, rewritten the ending of his sordid game. Looking back now, the collaboration seems like a fever dream, a bizarre chapter fueled by shock and a primal need for justice. It wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. It was about reclaiming agency, about refusing to be silent victims. It was about ensuring that the architect of such profound deception faced the consequences of his actions, consequences built from the very lies he told. We didn't destroy Marcus. We simply held up a mirror and allowed the reflection of his own duplicity to shatter his carefully constructed world. The most effective way to dismantle a house of cards is often just to expose the flimsy foundation it rests upon. Recently, about a year after everything settled, I received an elegant invitation in the mail. It was for the grand opening reception of Gallery Isabella, Isabella Thorne's new contemporary art gallery in Soho. Tucked inside was a brief, handwritten note on her new gallery letterhead. Amelia, it would mean a lot to me if you could come celebrate this new beginning, Isabella. Holding the invitation, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride for her resilience, gratitude for the strange solidarity we shared during that dark time, but also a lingering hesitation, a reluctance to revisit that painful chapter, even tangentially. Should I attend Isabella's gallery opening? A. Yes, attend the opening. Go and genuinely celebrate her success. It's a way to acknowledge the unique bond you share, honor her resilience, and perhaps find a measure of positive closure on that entire difficult episode for both of you. Show up as allies, not just co-victims. B. Send flowers and a heartfelt card, but do not attend. Attending might dredge up too many complicated feelings or create potential awkwardness. It's better to keep a respectful distance now that the battle is won. Offer genuine congratulations and support from afar, allowing both of you to fully move forward on your separate paths without the shadow of Marcus looming, however indirectly.